We're going to transition into the theme and the priority for today. And again, that's really understanding the community dimension of our wildfire resilience, and specifically how we support community leaders, helping protect their citizens and adapt to fire. So next, we will hear from two leaders on this topic. Daniel Berlant, our state fire marshal, who we congratulate for his appointment recently by Governor Newsom, and J.C. Hyde, who is the executive director of California Fire Safe Council. And of course, it's Fire Safe Councils that are leading this work across California communities. Welcome, Daniel. You got to turn that on. Sorry. Got to turn green.
Volume up. There we go. Okay. Much better. All right. Well, again, Daniel Berlant, State Fire Marshal, and as Patrick reported with some of the stats, we have made some major strides the last few years in our efforts to prepare communities against wildfire, part due to the task force, as well as the surge of funding that we have received, not only at CAL FIRE, but across many state departments and levels of government, as well as non-government organizations, all aligned in this goal of adapting communities. In just the past 6 years, California has experienced some of its most destructive wildfires, with over 50,000 structures being destroyed in just the past 6 years. As astronomical as that figure is, if we zoomed out of this chart and really compared the figures to the 1990s, there has been a nearly 2,000% increase in the number of structures destroyed just since 2017 compared to the entire decade of the 1990s. Despite the complexity, despite the challenges, despite, just the enormous amount of loss, we have a strong strategy for protecting our communities. Your roadmap in the action plan sets that nested approach with our homes in the center. It's in an all of the above approach, Secretary, as you like to use. To protect communities, we really have to empower Californians in that center circle to take parcel level mitigations. That includes clearing vegetation 100 feet around homes, known as defensible space, in conjunction with hardening our homes or using building or ignition resistant building materials to retrofit homes to withstand the embers and the flames of a wildfire. In the center circle, you see where we focus on community hardening. This is land use planning, development standards to ensure as we build new neighborhoods that they are adapted to communities, building fuel breaks in and around communities, as well as clearing hazardous vegetation around roadways to allow for emergency access and emergency evacuation. And then lastly, that outer ring is really where we restore landscape level natural ecosystems. And while I'm going to focus today on those inner circles, it is so critical to understand that we cannot achieve community preparedness without addressing forest health. Again, all of the above. To achieve community resiliency, just like the theme here of the task force and for my discussion, it's a systems approach. We have to do all of these things. In addition to fire protection, all of these elements of community preparedness assembled together is what makes us makes our communities adapted. Now, some of these are government regulations and requirements, but many of these are the responsibility of homeowners, the responsibility of community planners, of developers and builders that are building new homes. Some are private partners, like our electrical utility companies. So to truly prepare our community, we have to work together to do all of these things together to ensure that we're giving a community the best chance of survival. And more importantly, and I think you'll hear this from some of the other speakers later this morning, we have to have broad agreement that these are the mitigation strategies we're going to do and that we are all aligned as stakeholders to accomplish them. Now, as I mentioned at the top, the progress has included work and achievements from many departments across levels of government. For example, the Office of Energy Infrastructure Safety has hit many milestones in preventing electrical utility spark wildfires through the development of their comprehensive wildfire mitigation plans. We routinely join our partners at the Housing and Community Development and the Office of Emergency Services to coordinate our various wildfire mitigation grant programs. Between our three departments, we have collectively pushed out hundreds of millions of dollars towards wildfire mitigation projects for various local projects, all of which, again, are coordinated amongst the departments. To communicate and really align our work and our partners, we hold a monthly meeting known as our Wildfire Mitigation Advisory Committee. Member Don Hankins sits on that committee, and there's representation from many of the organizations that are here. But at each meeting, our office provides an update of the programs and the initiatives that we have underway. But more importantly, we listen to all of our stakeholders to get input into the work that we are charged with doing. In addition, we hear from all 19 member agencies on the efforts that they have going in their respective agencies, as well as receive various presentations on the latest wildfire mitigation research, projects, and hot topics. Now, a lot of science and research has gone into the mitigation strategies and requirements that we have, not only here in California, but in our best practices. The Institute for Business and Home Safety, from this picture, has a state-of-the-art ember production and wind tunnel facility that can create hurricane level winds. In this video, you see some of the highly realistic wildfire simulations that they use to really explore how embers ignite structures. Now, researchers recently have concluded that embers accumulate typically within about a 5-foot radius of the homes. And so from that finding, new requirements are in development to prohibit plants, vegetation, and flammable items within that first 5 feet. Again, you can see from this video, it's the landscape that caught on fire first and then spread to the home. The home on the right-hand side doesn't have any landscaping, and it's built to our California Chapter 7A code. So this type of research has informed our building code for many years. But we're continuing to partner with a number of research organizations, academia groups, to continue to ensure that our mitigations are science-backed. Since 2008, we've had some of the most stringent building codes in wildfire-prone areas, really arguably in the world. But the fact is about 90% of the homes in wildfire-prone areas were built before this code. And so our challenge becomes, how do we bring the nearly 10 million homes built before this code, how do we bring them up to the current standard? How do we harden them against the embers and the flames? And this is where that term home hardening comes into play. We've created a low-cost retrofit list to arm homeowners with information on things that they can do. Many of them low cost or no cost, don't require a permit, don't require you to hire an expensive contractor or do expensive amount of works. Easy solutions that can really make a major difference. But the other challenge that we have is not everybody can afford this work. Not everybody can physically do this work. And so how do we help those homeowners? Over the past couple of years, we've collaborated with Cal OES to answer that by developing a financial assistance retrofit program. That pilot is being piloted in 6 communities. We have representation from Siskiyou, Lake County as well, and as well as 4 others, where we're working to leverage FEMA hazard mitigation dollars and funds to be able to provide financial assistance to those homeowners to prioritize the home hardening and defensible space efforts. Now, our research has shown that based on density, if one home has parcel level mitigations, but the next door one does not, they're both still at risk. And so we have to address community-wide efforts. And so whether it's through fire safe councils, FireWise communities, or other types of neighborhood level groups, community-led organizations are integral to our ensuring that we have both parcel and community level mitigation. Now, as was reported earlier, and very proud, our team has surged the number of FireWise communities that are in good standing, meaning we review them every year. There are over 750 of those communities right now across California. And another recent success is a project where we have funded dollars through the California Fire Safe Council to staff a wildfire mitigation coordinator in nearly every single county. And I say nearly just because we're trying to get those last few counties on board, but the funding is there. And I know JC will likely expand on this, but that position has been a vital link to connecting the actions that we are doing at the state with local grassroots organizations, and more importantly, providing them capacity to access money. And again, more importantly, to access that money to then do good work on the ground. Now, to help communities plan for future development, we have a team of wildfire mitigation experts who are experienced fire captains, battalion chiefs that provide technical assistance with local governments, along with our partners at the Office of Planning and Research and a number of other organizations. We work to make sure that land use planners, that local government, building officials, planners, fire officials, all have access to training that we've provided to now over 300 different communities to provide these planners and these builders and these local fire officials with the foundational elements required for building in fire hazard areas. So as I wrap up today, I leave you with this amazing view of Yosemite, clear of wildfire smoke, a healthy forest, and just off screen, a prepared neighboring community just outside the park. But really, to ensure that we have this view, we have to continue this tiered approach: ecosystem restoration, community hardening, parcel level mitigation. And I'll tell you, each year it seems like we break record after record for wildfire damage. And measuring success in this area is not easy. I could probably continue to rattle off some more stats of the work that we're doing, but at the end of the day, the hardest thing in fire prevention is quantifying something that never happened because we prevented it. But I can confidently say that as we look back to 2022 and 2023, we have demonstrated in those years that when we invest in community resiliency at scale, we can actually see results even in the face of extreme climate conditions. So without a doubt, towards our communities, the efforts that we're doing today, our trajectory of wildfire destruction is being recalibrated. I leave here before I turn it over to my partner at the Fire Safe Council, a link where homeowners can find more information, readyforwildfire.org, on the tips that we need the residents to do. But then at this link has all of the different programs and projects that CAL FIRE Office of the State Fire Marshal has underway. So thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm going to pass it over to JC Hyde.
Thanks so much, Daniel. Really impressive presentation. JC.
Hey, good morning. I'm JC Hyde. I'm the Executive Director for the California Fire Safe Council. Really pleased to be here today to talk about our work on community wildfire adaptation. Our mission is to support community-led wildfire resilience work through grant-making, technical assistance, and capacity building. And we support a network of over 300 local fire safe councils around the state that are working alongside public efforts to build resilience in their communities. And in many communities, these community-based organizations are the foundation of the fire adapted communities work under Goal 2 of the task force's action plan. Up here I have the fire adapted communities wheel. This was developed by our partners at FACnet, and it shows the various factors that impact community wildfire resilience. The framework includes coordinated landscape, community, and parcel level interventions, along with planning and education, strong codes and regulations, and also incorporates other sectors like public health. This wheel shows the whole menu, but the reality is that wildfire resilience is going to look different in every community based on that community's unique needs, on their community structure, on their landscape, and their built environments. And so the key to successful progress in this space is community ownership over their own resilience trajectories and their own priorities. And as we incentivize and fund this work, we need to enable unique and customized solutions. And our strategies need to be adaptable enough to work in different communities with different needs. Community-based organizations like local fire safe councils are crucial to the success of this fire adapted communities work because they have the local knowledge and the local relationships to directly mobilize their neighbors into action. Fundamentally, adaptation requires behavior change. It's deeply personal. We're asking people to change their homes, their communities, their habits and lifestyles, and invest their money in taking these actions. So the community has to buy in and the individuals have to buy in. And that message is often best received from a trusted local partner. And these community-based organizations can be this partner in coordination with public efforts because they have those relationships. These organizations are usually made up of the very community members that we are trying to reach. So we work at CFSC to ensure that they have the tools, resources, and support they need to do this work. As Chief Berlant mentioned, we have a great partnership with CAL FIRE where we have coordinated with our county governments to place a county coordinator into 52 of 58 counties. We're almost there. This is a full-time position in each county that provides this capacity. They bring together stakeholders, they project manage, they grant manage, and they add the bandwidth to develop these locally tailored solutions that we desperately need. And at their core, the mission of the county coordinators is to deploy mitigations and education within the FAC framework. I want to provide a couple examples of the type of impact that community-based organizations can make in the fact space. The first example is Mountain Communities Fire Safe Council. This is out of Idlewild in Riverside County. We have awarded them over $6 million in their lifetime to do community-oriented work. And since 2014, they have been able to reciprocate with $2 million in match funds. And they're able to complete much of their work because they've been able to rally and sustain a crew of local volunteers who are donating thousands of hours every year to help low-income seniors create defensible space, process firewood removed from fuels reduction jobs, and then donate that to charity and provide fire safety education to their neighbors. And the Fire Safe Council coordinates with their local fire agencies to make sure that the work those volunteers are doing is aligned with the county's needs and aligned with the regional needs. And the value of that volunteer time plus the value of the wood is used as match for their grants, which creates a pathway to sustain and fund their efforts. Mountain Communities is successful because they recognize the work is personal and they've built these strong relationships within their neighborhoods to rally the residents to take coordinated and consistent action in a way that has produced these ongoing and measurable results. And the success of small organizations like Mountain Communities can then be scaled up and coordinated into a strategic approach like this example in Sonoma County. After the Tubbs fire in 2017, there was an explosive growth in the number of small wildfire-oriented groups in the county. Many of them are like Mountain Communities, where they're small, volunteer-led, small service areas. And Sonoma County also has a county-level Fire Safe Council. That Fire Safe Council has one full-time paid position, and it's their county coordinator. But the onboarding of this county coordinator has provided them the capacity to begin to organize all of these independent groups into a strategic approach under the countywide CWPP with the County Fire Safe Council, ensuring that strong coordination with the county and with their neighboring counties. The County Fire Safe Council also serves as a fiscal sponsor for these smaller groups so that they don't have this administrative burden of grant management, but they can still are empowered to do the boots on the ground work. And this structure is enabling really robust outcomes, coordinated community-led efforts in roadside fuels reduction, home hardening for low-income residents in coordination with Habitat for Humanity, accessible education in multiple languages, and a very strong FireWise program. And this is a really excellent model because it enables the implementation of local priorities at the neighborhood scale, but still ensuring alignment with these larger goals. And the robust nonprofit structure that has developed up here has enabled them to scale up and down to augment the county and the public efforts that are happening in the space, while also pushing a lot of the community-facing work into the hands of the trusted local partners on the ground. And this is just one minimal investment, one FTE, that is allowing them to really coordinate and become organized and make a lot of strong progress in the FAC space. Because FAC efforts need to be organized locally and implemented by strong community partners, there are some enabling conditions for success. The first is sustainable funding. I'm sure you hear this every time, but this is risk reduction is long-term. We can't just do it once. The second is aligned programs, and the third is flexible programs. Patrick talked a bit about the work that you're doing in the space to align your strategies, to provide block grants, but we're seeing a lot of this in the landscape space, but I haven't seen it start to trickle into the community and into the fire adapted communities work, particularly when it comes to defensible space, home hardening. So there's a great opportunity to take some of those concepts and push them down to the community level. And finally, all of this is really contingent on these local organizations having the capacity to accept and manage the funds that we are sending their way. This includes personnel, administrative capacity. They need to be able to manage a grant. They need to have the accounting system set up, and to ensure that that funding is managed compliantly, because if it's not, it'll cause the organizations to crumble and we're going to lose key partners who we need to get this work done. So what does this look like in practice? We've been looking to other sectors who are doing community-facing work. And in particular, we've seen some really strong models in the public health sector, and it's a sector I encourage you all to take a look at. So a potential pathway could look like this. First, we support each county through a planning process that includes prioritized interventions that are going to consider risk and social vulnerability, a plan for building and maintaining that local capacity, to ensure readiness for implementation and to ensure that they can manage that funding and get those projects implemented, and also mechanisms for sustaining those efforts long term. And then as funding agencies, we need to work together to fund the implementation of their plan, similar to the way that Patrick was discussing earlier. Rather than a project here and a project there, we need to make sure the projects that we're funding are coordinated, same time, same place at these different scales that need to be implemented. And ideally, we reduce the friction of money by passing it through a smaller number of organizations, be it a county fire safe council, an RCD, or even a regional body, so that we as CFSC or as other funders can provide some mechanisms to come up under those organizations, provide wraparound support so they can build that administrative capacity to be able to manage this work. The county coordinator can then be leveraged to support this capacity and also ensure stakeholder engagement and alignment, and monitor progress and assure alignment with those larger goals as well. And the recipient organizations can then coordinate with all these local groups that exist in many counties to push the projects and the money down so the people who with the relationships can get out there and do the boots on the ground. So in closing, we're making a lot of great progress in this adaptation space. Communities are coming out, they are mobilizing, but there's abundant opportunities to enhance our impact by streamlining our funding mechanisms, coordinating more effectively, and leveraging local partners to actually do the work. And I think those changes will really move the needle on community wildfire resilience. Thank you. And here is my contact information.
JC, thanks so much. So impressive what the Fire Safe Councils are doing. So huge thanks for your leadership and your partnership. We have a handful of minutes to ask questions as the executive committee of Chief Berlant and JC. So maybe I would start it off. One question for each. Chief Berlant, home hardening is clearly so important to protect communities, and we've seen it, whether it was the Camp Fire, other fires that, structures that were hardened or those that were built with these stronger building standards survive fire. Yet, given that 90% of the existing homes, aren't built to that standard, my sense is that home hardening is not hugely widespread or mainstreamed. So question for you is, while the pilots are encouraging and using the FEMA hazard mitigation funding is promising, what do you think it's going to take to significantly scale up and mainstream home hardening? And then for JC, just really interested in understanding how can we get more communities activated? What's the state of your partnerships with CSAC or the League of Cities or the rural counties? Do you think that there are communities that can be turned on to this work that are not yet turned on, and how can we do that?
Let me start by pointing out that defensible space has been a requirement for decades, and we have provided inspections and enforcement, and we find that typically we get about 90% compliance through education. Now, home hardening is a relatively new term. Some argue that it's not the right term, but we have really just started that educational process. I truly do believe that is the place to go, but it's educating different types of demographics, those that can afford to do the work in order to keep their insurance, for example. I think that the insurance requirements are going to be a major factor in forcing, using that word, this work to be done. Our role, though, I think will continue to be educational. But again, I did touch on there are going to be those that, one, can't afford to have insurance, let alone to do this work. Those that can't afford to do the work and maybe don't have the motivation to do the work. And that's the group that we really need to focus in on. We can't provide financial assistance or free money to everybody, but maybe there are other incentives that we can explore in trying to get homeowners to understand the critical need for this. Once a home is destroyed, the costs to rebuild are astronomically higher. And so this is an investment to truly not only protect homes and protect lives, but truly to lower the cost, because rebuilding is just so much more.
And I was encouraged that there are a lot of techniques to harden homes that are low cost or no cost. And I initially thought that, home hardening was spending $30,000 on a home, which of course it can be. But your point is that there's a lot that folks can do to protect their homes that don't cost a lot of money.
Yeah, arguably replacing a roof is probably the most expensive thing. But data shows that almost 99% of homes here in California have compliant roofs. So roofing is not the biggest thing, but those become the the hurdles or the barriers that we think of, that we perceive it to be too difficult. But you can go out to your local hardware store, buy some screen mesh that's small enough to close the vents in your attic, to still allow air to get in, but to keep those embers out. You can go out and for very little money buy weather stripping to place around your garage to close the gaps that occur between most garage doors and the frame. And so trying to break down those barriers of perception that this is a costly thing. Yeah, there are costly items, but there are a lot of things that people can do that do chip away at it. We're doing a lot of research right now with a number of partners to try to figure out what those costs look like. And we spent a lot of time prioritizing the work. So we do know, and this is going to be rolled out in our financial assistance program, which of the retrofits, which there can be dozens of requirements to get a home up to speed, which of them pack the best bang for the buck, if you will, that make the home the most safest?
Great, thanks.
Yeah, it's a great question regarding mobilizing communities. And I think the answer is that our communities are mobilized. Folks who live in the WUI know that they are at risk. They want to take action. There are counties that have 40 fire safe councils. There are 750 Firewise communities in the state already. And so I think the bigger challenge is how do we support them in doing the work, because they're already interested in doing it. So these models of figuring out how to reduce the burden of managing money that comes their way so we can make it easier for them to accept the money and get out and do the work. I think that's the key to be able to make this more effective. Also, how do we, if you have a county that has 40 fire safe councils, how do we make sure that they're all swimming in the same direction and really doing complementary work? And how do we as funders look at the suite of grant applications we receive that are all, great worthy projects, and how do we determine which ones are the biggest bang for our buck and in the highest priority areas, and how do we fund them concurrent interventions that are going to be at these different scales? Because community members, they want to participate, but there may be, as Daniel said, financial barriers. People are busy. This may not be their number one priority, but it's something that they do care about because they see the damage. So if we can make it easy for them through education by providing some structure to get them out to fund the work or to even just enable the work, there are volunteers who want to help, like in mountain communities. So really, I think it's just a matter of organization more so than mobilizing the communities.
Yeah, and point taken on what we can do at the state, which is apply what we've done on landscapes, which is streamline the funding, provide flexibility and accountability, of course, so that it's not a matter of mobilizing communities. They're already mobilized, but how do we get the resources to them so they can be maximally effective?
Yes, exactly.
Great. We're going to move on to the next panel, but I want to make sure that if there's a burning question or comment for any of our executive committee members, that they have an opportunity to share it. Supervisor.
I was actually at our local fire safe council meeting, and Chief Berlant, one member brought a mesh screen that's approved. And I, as a past mechanical engineer, there's a difference between like making standards and doing approvals. And we kind of argued, like, I'd rather see mesh screen, things that aren't assemblies meet a standard. Because if you require that wire company to get an approval versus meeting a standard, it increases costs. You mentioned like go get screens. The person that brought the screen happens to be the past fire chief in our area, and he's seen many screens, even though they have the right mesh, maybe the wire diameter, either its composition or its size is wrong and it breaks under, all the embers. And so I would push for standards for simple things such as wire mesh. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Duly noted. And I know our fire marshal will follow up on that.
Just a brief question. You both mentioned Firewise communities. If you're a member of the audience and the public, tell us about what that means. If I live in a Firewise community, does that give me a reasonable assurance that things are getting done? And is it for the task force something, as we develop a dashboard on the community side that's similar to the landscape side, that's a key measure?
Yeah, very briefly, It is an educational tool. It provides resources to a neighborhood, but if a homeowner doesn't want to participate, they don't have to participate. It also, is not necessarily a metric to ensure compliance every single year. But the goal is to try to bring people together so that they can identify those at a grassroots level, not the state coming in saying you're compliant, you're not compliant, but neighbor to neighbor. And we have found that to be more productive in actually bringing compliance. More importantly, though, insurance companies do recognize Firewise communities. With or without the assurance of work, they do recognize Firewise communities as a component of community-based mitigation. You bring up, though, that is a work that we need to do. It's great that we have 750 of these communities, but how many of those homes within those communities are actually compliant? But it is the first step in really empowering education at a grassroots level.
That's really helpful. And at some point later on, would want to understand your targets for expanding the number of Firewise communities. 750 is impressive, but we're also a really big state. So I imagine there are a lot of communities that have not yet received that designation. Okay, we're going to move on. Thank you so much.